decays, Genesis Lewison here as always, and we are about to do the timeline of Planet of the Apes. On the Florida coast in 1972, astronauts Taylor, Dodge, Stewart, and Landon are launched on their first interstellar exploration mission. Later that year, the astronauts Skipper and Brent, and maybe two others, are launched along the same flight path as Taylor's vehicle. It was sent to check what happened to Taylor's. So now we leave Florida and go to California. The first ship, that being Taylor's, reappears in space. It lands off the California coast, slightly north of San Clemente, and is met by a mobilized U.S. Navy spaceflight recovery crew. The ship is opened, and then it's found to be piloted by Dr. Cornelius, Zira, and Dr. Milo. This, in 1973, is when the events of Escape from the Planet of the Apes occur. By the end of the film, the birth of baby Milo occurs, and the murder of Zira and Cornelius take place. Milo begins his long education under Senor Armando's care. From 1973 to 1981, that's 8 years, they're marked by a contradictory development in two aspects of society. Space exploration expands. Unmanned probes range to the stars and back. This includes the discovery of faster-than-light travel, and manned flights over great distance are becoming more common. At the same time, however, the governments on Earth are growing more totalitarian and is ordered to cope with the increasing economic, political, and energy struggles. All information concerning the two lost spaceships and the secrets of the future that were revealed by Cornelius and Zira is locked away under heavy lock and key. Few are allowed to access it, and publicly it's basically said that the chimpanzees, Cornelius and Zira, were a hoax and nothing more. The name Caesar is given to Milo by Senor Armando. In 1981, Caesar, aged 8, begins his bareback riding acrobatics with Armando's circus. With political repression, the smaller circuses, like Armando's, have been forced to play to dwindling country audiences, thus helping Caesar avoid dangerous publicity. In 1982, it is in this period that the repercussions of the plague begin to be felt. Humans, to replace their lost pets, turn to keeping small primates, birds, lizards, and other animals. The primates are found to be more useful and gradually become the most common household animal. Gradually, larger and larger ones are taken in. In a generation of primates, the plague's genetics effects shows themselves. Stature increases, and so does intelligence in larger orders. The government increases to be more authoritarian. A reverse migration of people from the suburbs into cities results in a large towns becoming almost feudal fort-like, surrounded by farmlands called the provinces. Pollution in many areas is brought under control. A massive air purification plant in the Rockies keeps California air perfectly clean. However, with this increase in government structure, a slave class is developed. Ape management incorporated as a semi-public branch is added to the government in 1986, with their only task being rudimentary conditioning. By 1991, though, they are a monolith, now wholly government-operated, with a wide range of responsibilities, including ape training, day-to-day life training, and with humans bring on the acceleration that this basically makes apes become smarter. Armando decides that Caesar, now nearly 18 and an accomplished performer, is old enough to see the truth of the ape condition. He brings the circus into play at an unnamed city on the west coast, most likely San Francisco, judging by interior data. Events of the conquest of the Planet of the Apes begin. 18 years after his birth, Caesar finally becomes, like they said, the head of the ape rebellion. From 1991 to 1992, Caesar leads his people from the city into the provinces, in this case the San Francisco Peninsula. Here, Caesar attempts to build a home for his people with the aid of a few human advisors. Massive education programs within the community tries to teach the apes how to speak. They face little harassment because elsewhere in the country, and perhaps the world, the apes' rebellions is spreading. The governments are breaking down, and the world cannot police itself anymore. In 1992, nuclear war occurs. The work of a single madman, international politics fall, some countries taking advantage of the U.S.'s governmental fall are taking swift and effective action. Laser defense ABM systems prevent war from utterly destroying the earth and life, and major cities are bombed, but surrounding areas are livable to a degree. From 1992 to 2001, the ape human population that remains is in a state of shock. There is little or no communication over great distances, so Caesar's community, now isolated, accepts the survivors in its areas, and a new ape-human society is born. Despite Caesar's wishes, humans do somewhat become a second-class group, and ape culture divisions begin to rise. Aldo, a former guerrilla during the rebellion, calls himself general and begins to train an army of guerrillas. In 1995, Caesar's son Cornelius II is born to his wife Lisa. During this time as well, between 1991 and 2001, the residual radiation is having its effect on both humans and apes. The plague-altered genes of the apes increase their already rapid intellectual development, in some cases like the Virgil and Medemus, the orangutans, incredibly so. The humans tend to be more docile and less given to action when angered. It is not clear at this time whether this is an effect of radiation or just simply that they're living in a society where they're the weakest ones. Meanwhile, another branch of humanity is developing. The ones that survived the war but stayed in the cities, the mutants. Inspector Kolb has taken over in the remains of San Francisco, being that his former master, Governor Breck, did formerly rule the city, and he runs a scavenger city full of repressed hate. The events of Planet of the Apes, Battle for the Planet of the Apes, begin and conclude. The human win a slight ideological victory and temporary equal status with the apes. Culp, General Aldo, and Cornelius II sadly die. Oh, okay, Cornelius II sadly dies. The other two were assholes. From 2001 to 2038, the original ape city started by Caesar grows. Caesar rules benevolently and well, but the human position continues to fall, seemingly without solution. Lisa, his wife, sadly dies in 2038. The Forbidden Zone begins to become a real danger as animals and plants mutation gets out of hand. In the city of San Francisco, the mutants are splitting up into different factions under the leadership of Mendez. And the beginning of the destiny of the become one of the Gestalan mind starts. In 2040, the Ape Human Council begins. Caesar, sadly, dies at 67 years old. Not survived by children or wife, his rule is turned over to a council of humans and apes under the leadership of a particularly well-respected orangutan named the Lawmaker. Both he and the office are christened the Ape Human Council. From 2040 to 2052, conditions between the apes and humans continue to get worse. While educational programs maintain that there is no difference, human labor under the aura of inferiority falls. Voluntarily, they tend to withdraw from our active participation in the council and draw themselves into a community within a community, separated by a river from the apes. It is only partially a ghetto. The level of culture continues to fall. In 2070, we move to the New York coast now. In San Francisco, I know it's not in the New York coast, but let me explain. In San Francisco, the mutant factions have gone into war with one another. The B1 winning out. Mendez and his loyal followers managed to escape into a transnational transport station road with the Alpha Omega device and work their way towards their new home in New York. In this period, Mendez and his mutant group have reached New York City and established themselves there. Mixture of their bloodline with local mutant begin to produce a new breed with telepathic powers, and finding new religious significance in the Alpha Omega device. In 2070-50, The lawgiver of the New York region writes these sacred scrolls and their rather unflattering portrayal of humanity. In 385, the Ape City near New York City becomes isolated in this period of time. It was not a colony of the original Ape City, but developed independently, and therefore has no records of Caesar, his ape-human society of happiness, or anything, or even that the apes and humans can live in peace at all. In 385 to 3085 to 3955, the fall of mankind is complete. Approximately by 34,000, the combination of radiation, deterioration, and general demoralization succeeded in wiping the minds from humankind. They are forced away from ape cities as unproductive and useless animals and begin to live in the forests, wild. Late in this period, humans begin to be used as experimental animals and entertaining hunting diversions for the gorillas. A certain instinctual pattern remains in the people, but it's less than successful. So now in 3955, the first launched space capsule, the spaceship, containing the 3 surviving males and 1 dead female astronaut, crash lands in an inland lake somewhere in the area south of what was known as Long Island in our time. Land masses have shifted the ocean, so there no longer is an ocean. The spacecraft instruments are damaged upon impact, and the date meter reads 3978. The events of the original Planet of the Apes movie begin. '55 as well. This is the full 3955 storyline. Ape City is awash with political undercurrents. Dr. Zaius has succeeded in quashing the ripples caused by Taylor's appearance and abilities. By General Urs campaigning for a war is beyond his control. Several scouts are lost near the Forbidden City not long after Taylor disappears, and now war is on. There is also a chimpanzee political undercurrent, and while pretending to go along with Zaius, Cornelius and Zira have secretly been aiding the genius chimpanzee, Dr. Milo, in his studies of the rescued spaceship, the one Taylor had arrived in. He is analyzing it in an attempt to repair it to be ready to fly. They plan to use it as a kind of traumatic evidence they feel Ape City needs to escape total loss of the light of the truth. Later that year, Brent's ship lands. Skipper and the other astronauts are lost in the crash. Events of Beneath the Planet of the Apes take place as Brent encounters Nova in Ape City in his search for Taylor. Brent's arrival of the movie plus 2 days is the end. As the Alpha Omega bomb, originally stored in the vaults of San Francisco's missile complex and cherished by 26 generations of the House of Mendez, exploded while in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, the abandoned nuclear waste one. The end of everything. A cataclysmic reaction spread across the globe. A shockwave blast kills everyone on Earth and basically destroys it. But it also shoots Dr. Milo, Dr. Cornelius, and Zira just as it approaches orbit, and it manages to throw them back in time, just as Taylor and Brent did earlier. And, well, when it flies back, the ship lands they land in California in 1973, aka the beginning again. Basically, the Planet of the Apes original timeline is a circular timeline. Basically, one event in the beginning will cause the one event at the end, and it'll continue going around in circles like that. That was the original timeline. Now on to the confusing as hell Tim Burton one, which I'll try to explain to you.